In this video, we're going to talk about the context of property and how God established property and why he established property, because really, I don't think we stop to think about that. Why is that significant? Why did he teach us a particular way to honor our property, to bless others with what he's given us, to understand that we have been blessed with our property? And also, I think one of the things that we don't realize is that he also established property in order to help us to understand who we are to him, and that he has indeed redeemed his property. When he taught us in the word regarding redemption, he did that originally within the context of understanding property. For example, if someone had sold something or given something to the Lord and they wanted it back, like a piece of land, they had to pay 2/10 of an ephah, or 1/5. They had to add that to the price of that land or whatever the thing was, and they could redeem their property. And that is exactly the same amount of an ephah that is added to the recipe of bread that represent God's people. Exactly the same amount. In Leviticus 24, in Leviticus 23, when he's talking about the Festival of Weeks, exactly the same amount. And God began reminding me this morning about how he uses certain metaphors and parables in order to teach us things. And, truly, I kind of appreciate that, because if it was just about him using us or our bodies as a way to speak to us, we would either miss a lot or we'd be given much more grief. And so if he allows something to be affected in our property, in our field, with our crops, in our land, to help us to understand what he's doing, if he starts harming the land, if he starts destroying the land, is that not better than him destroying us? Is that not mercy? Is that not grace? Is that not compassion that he's taking on us to give us yet one more object for us to look at and see what he's teaching, where we're at with him, or to simply learn a lesson and have understanding? There's also this understanding of what it means to be part of his property, to be part of his body, and for us to understand that we are woven together as a body, and that what affects one part of the body affects the whole body, and what affects our property affects us. And so not only does it affect the body, but it also affects the head. It also affects Jesus Christ when we are behaving in a particular way, and we need to be able to understand that. And the only way for us to understand that is for us to have an experience of it. And the only way for us to have an experience of it is for us to understand his design and what he's established in the word, how he speaks to his people. When I send these things, my people need to understand that they have to return to me. Inherent is in that, in him starting to destroy the earth, we also need to understand that this is warning us of the destruction that is going to come on us if we don't fix this, if we don't return to him, if we don't change. That's how we fix it, is by returning to the one who fixes it. I hesitated over whether or not to tell you this story of what happened yesterday, because it was very intense and terrifying for me, and also because I feel embarrassed that I'm in this position, and I think that's right. I don't think that this is something that my inner parent should be comforting my inner child and telling her not to be embarrassed. I actually think that it's right that I should be embarrassed about the situation that I experienced. Not shamed, but I feel that I should have some sort of level of embarrassment and understanding. And the reason why is because I need to understand that God is the only good in me, and that when I separate from him, I make really bad decisions. He is the only one who discerns. He's the only one who makes good decisions or knows how to teach me how to make good decisions. So if I separate from him, it's not that I've grown to a point where I can now make good decisions on my own. That's not the reality of it. It's that I am connected to him now, and I make decisions with him, and I live by his spirit. If I separate from his spirit, I have no wisdom of myself. And I want you to think about Solomon and the fact that Solomon had so much wisdom, more wisdom than anyone. And look at his story. What did he do in the end? He turned to false gods. And I've often wondered, how could you have all of this godly wisdom and then turn to false gods? How could you be so foolish? Because our sinful state has not changed. We are not told to heal our sinful state. We're told to circumcise from it. Don't return to it. Don't return to the vomit. And yesterday, that contractor that I told you that I hired, the one who had the bottle of vodka in his front seat, the one who was super messy and clearly has a demon in him, showed up at my house. I looked outside of my window and I saw him and someone else rushing my house with a machine with like a giant blade, like a sawzall, super aggressive, super invasive. He was coming to take down the posts that he had installed, which is fine because they need to go anyway in order for the job to be done correctly. But he rushed my house and he rushed me and he pointed that machine at me and he turned it on and it was terrifying. I mean, I really believe that if I had not screamed and run inside my house, he may not have done it intentionally, but he could have very well cut me to pieces. It was terrifying. And it was also extremely invasive and intrusive for him to come on my property and defile it like that. And I could absolutely see the demon, the evil that was in him. I could see it in the way that he was, people can yell and it's not aggressive. Like it's not necessarily aggressive. It might be intense, but you don't feel like that person is like necessarily exerting intense aggression towards you. This man was exerting intense aggression, and as he was carrying off these like poles, he went, ha ha. And the guy is full of the devil. It's very, very clear. There are certain ways to do things, and that's not the way to do it. In any event, I was left with that situation, and I want to share with you what's going on real time because it's important. It's important for us to understand where we default to emotionally and how we approach God and where we need to bring our hearts. Because the first thing that we do when we're in the flesh like that, I was getting really angry with God. You're supposed to protect me. What am I doing every day if you're not protecting me? Who do I have? If I don't have you, I might as well just lay down and die. And I don't mean that. Don't take that in a suicidal way. That's not how I mean it. What I mean is, if you don't have God, what do you have? You don't have anything. And I was feeling in the moment like I didn't have him, like he had betrayed me. And I was telling him, I mean, does my decision really necessitate all of this? I know that what I did was wrong, but does it really deserve this? Listen, I don't get to decide that. Actually, God is the one who decides that. If I step away from his spirit and he wants me to know how serious it is when I choose my enemy over him, because we think this isn't that big of a deal. It's a big deal. It is a big deal that God has given me, that he has me in this ministry, that he has given me certain property, that he has given me also people who I care for, people who I manage, property over whom I have been given authority. And we've been talking about slaves in the past week on some of these videos. I have been telling you that it's really important that we're not relying on our own understanding or that we're relying on what the world has taught us or what the devil has done, that we understand what a slave is, how slaves were established in the word and why. And that if we have been given certain things, we have to preside over them correctly because they are our property. And God actually uses that reference in the word regarding slaves. If God has given me certain things, I'm not at liberty to make decisions apart from him because I think those things are mine. Because just as he's given me authority over certain things and certain people, he has ultimate authority over me and everything I have. So it is serious, and he is using my property to help me understand certain things. And I'll tell you, going outside of my house and seeing the defilement that I allowed this person, I invited him in to my life, my property, and he defiled it. He not only made it super messy, but then he came in and cut everything. He didn't do the job right. He defiled it. And when I walk out there, I feel a visceral reaction, and I feel that my property is part of me. And I feel embarrassment because of the decision that I made. And that's right. I should feel embarrassment, and I should understand that I don't have the ability to make decisions of myself. I don't have the ability to make decisions apart from God, so it's good that I feel embarrassment over that. It's not my fault that this person is who he is, that he has what he has going on in him, but God is sovereign over everything, and I have not dealt with a situation like this in a very long time because I have not made decisions apart from him in a very long time. And he is going to deal with me according to what he knows is good. So when I tell you things like your sin is what is causing what needs to be dealt with regard to your symptoms, I don't want you to think that A plus B equals C. You need to lean on God's understanding, not the world's. It doesn't mean that your sin is somehow compensatory to what's going on in your body by your own understanding. Likewise, do you think that what this man did is compensatory to the bad decision that I made to invite someone to build a fence who God had not given me permission to invite? No, in and of my own understanding, I don't think that's compensatory. And that's the reason I went to God and said, really? Like, this is how you are thinking that this is what's necessary? Did my sin necessitate this? Well, that's my own understanding. I think of myself that this is not compensatory. And yet God knows better. He knows what's good. He knows what needs to be taught. He knows how he's going to be glorified in it. He knows how he's going to be glorified through me sharing my ridiculousness so that you can also learn, so that you can understand. I don't get to lean on my own understanding. I don't get to go to him and judge him and tell him that he's wrong. I need to understand that I'm wrong. I need to understand that he is sovereign, that he knows what is good, and he knows how to deal with me, and he knows how to position me and posture me and discipline me so that I stay on the path and I don't forsake my covenant. He wants me to know how serious this is. And I started to say something about this property feeling like it's part of me. How do you think Christ feels about us? It's right that I should feel that this property is a part of me because it's been given to me to behave in a correct way. It's right that when God starts sending things that we call global warming, that we feel like this is a part of us, it's affecting us. We don't say, oh, you need to separate yourself from that because your surroundings are not a part of you. Baloney. Our surroundings are a part of us. I can tell you emphatically that the way that people live is definitely a part of them. If you live in filth, that's a part of you, and it needs to come out of your heart. If you're hoarding, if you're, not living in a clean way, that is definitely a part of you, and it needs to come out of your heart. You have to deal with that with God. You have to let him deal with you on that. If there's chaos and drama in your life, that is a part of you. That needs to come out of your heart. You have to be dealt with on it. If you're embarrassed about it, don't let psychology or mental health tell you, oh, you don't need to be embarrassed about that. That's not who you are. Yes, it is. It's part of who you are right now. That decision that I made is part of who I am right now, and I need to be dealt with and changed in order for that to resolve. It's not enough to just hire a new contractor and make it go away. And many of us do that. We just implement superficial solutions to make something go away, and we never learn the lesson, and these things continue to be a part of our lives. This is why the steps. This is why it's necessary that we're learning from God's ministry, that we're actually being changed, that we're actually recognizing the things that he sends in his sovereignty, knowing what he knows is good, not what we think is good or right. And then he'll remit, and then he'll relent. That's what he promises in the Bible. He didn't give me this grief willingly. He gave it to me for a purpose. And God has been teaching me this parable, this metaphor, and how to understand it, how to understand my property, how to understand what's in my life, and all of the things that he sends in order to understand my own healing. That if my land is defiled, this land, he talks about us, our bodies, and our souls, as well as being land. He talks about an adulterous wife. Is the land not defiled? So that's well established in the Bible. He wants us to understand certain things. And so if he is harming the land, we need to recognize it. And we need to look at that and go, thank God he's so merciful that he starts harming the land before he starts harming us. But guess what's next on the chopping block if we don't recognize it? Guess what's next in this timeline if we don't recognize what he's doing right now? What's next is the Antichrist reign. And then we will personally be the ones defiled. Why? Because we didn't listen and we didn't recognize the parable, the metaphor, the rules that he has established, the warnings and alerts that he has established in order for us to return to him, in order for us to understand how he relents so that we're spared from the hour of trial and testing that's going to come on the entire earth. When I bought the commercial property, it was an absolute mess. That place had been operating as an illegal marijuana dispensary. It stunk like pot. I don't think it had been cleaned the entire time that they owned it. It was an absolute dilapidated disaster. People were squatting there. They were leaving all kinds of drug paraphernalia. They were defecating on the property. It was just sickening. It was absolutely sickening. I had to bring an entire construction crew in there, and they made this place. This place is absolutely stunning. You would never know what was going on there and what it looked like and what it smelled like. God really restored this place. But it was distressing to me because it was this property that, and I know that there are some people who, like investors, they just don't care. They're just slumlords and they don't care, but that tells you something about their heart. I do not come from money. I don't come from anything. And I have taken pride in everything that has been given to me. I have known that it is by God. I have always taken care of what I had, whether it was a one-room little shack or it was the things that I have now. It bothers me when people don't take care of what they have. And so I had a relationship with this property. This property feels like part of me. And as it's being restored, there's something that's being restored inside of me. And if it's defiled, if it's invaded, I feel that too. And God was showing me how strongholds work because it was very difficult to get rid of these people. It was very difficult to get, squatters and loiterers off of that property. It wasn't just about calling the police station, getting a no trespassing, something on file, because you can sign something that allows them to come, allows the police department to come onto the property and arrest anyone who's trespassing. So if I saw someone on camera and I called the police, they could come and they could arrest that person and I didn't need to be there. But there were a lot of things that would happen at that property, and slowly but surely it was being restored, not just in terms of its physical restoration, but there was something spiritual that was going on there. There was some sort of a stronghold. And I don't know how that works. I only know what God was teaching me through the property regarding strongholds, that there's work that we have to do in order to bring out what we allowed in, and then those strongholds will release. It was not enough, and believe me, we tried. In the beginning, as God was teaching us this, the groundskeeper and I would go there and we tried to scream out spirits from that place, and we would do all kinds of stuff. Anoint the place with oil. We did so much, and God was really teaching me. And so in Heart Known series, I wrote about it. I wrote one of the stories that I wrote in the book that I use with you guys. And then, of course, you do the activities for those of you, many of you have been doing it. One of the stories that I wrote was a story called Remodel, and I'm going to read it to you right now. I want you to pay attention to the metaphors that he was speaking to me regarding my own healing process as he was healing this building. He tells me of his plans for me as this building is restored, that I'll be healing with it in the form of metaphor. I try to hurry up this thing, wanting now to write the ending of this story so I can end this fight. He says, I will use everything, not a single thing in vain, but you will have to stay in step, not controlling from your brain. You asked of me to heal your heart, your legs, they burn and numb. Painful squeezing in your chest. Your heart is almost done. I want you to understand these are literal physical symptoms that I was having along with this building. I don't write these stories just to write them. They are lived experiences. Lately, I've been bringing up resentments in your heart. Your heart's holding betrayals and it's tearing you apart. You think it represents a part of you that's been taken, but I am just and I too am yours. You have not been forsaken. So understand right there that we are his property and he is also ours. We have to understand that. We have to understand the bi-directional relationship between us and our property, that it does feel like a part of us and we feel invaded when our property has been invaded. It affects us personally. And likewise, he takes that personally too. When we allow others to invade, when we make decisions apart from him, he's our husband. We're his property. He is ours. He is our beloved and our beloved is ours. The property you worked so hard so you could now prepare, pouring all your heart and soul so others can heal there. Now you find invaders inhabiting this space, trashing and tormenting this sacred healing place. They trespass on this property. They disrespect the grounds. In pockets of the property, there are storage items found. It wouldn't be so terrible if they would just respect. You struggle with the way to handle getting this in check. Resentments, they are brought to mind. Your spirit feels discouraged. The people taking for themselves what's meant for me to flourish. I teach you, stay in step with me and listen what I say. Bless them with what they've taken and send them on their way. Like the lizard's tail released when an enemy comes to call, moving right along, he says, I will not take the fall. This is what I teach you and how I heal your heart. Bless them and forgive them, and you won't be further marred. Listen to the metaphor, the light in you that's leached. Bless them with what they have received. Now time for them to leave. No more holding on, my child. This light inside's for you. Keep focused on the things I've built, and know I've got this too. I'm hoping that you can hear the way that God was teaching me to look at the things that I was experiencing in my life. I wasn't, yes, at a time I was screaming them away when I did not have understanding and I did not have wisdom and I was listening to counterfeit Christianity. But you have to recognize that these are things that God has said in the word. When I send these things, you need to understand that I am sovereign. I have sent them. I sent that spirit to torment Saul when he spurned me. I send spirits to torment you when you spurn me. I send consequences. I send blessing for obedience. I send punishment for disobedience. I send all these things. And so if he sends all these things, what does it mean for us? How do we need to posture ourselves? How do we need to return? And I'll tell you how we don't return. The way that I started. Is this really necessary? Was all this necessary, Lord? To send a man who just pointed a blade at me, swung a blade at me, turned it on, and I thought that I was going to die. Is that necessary? Only God knows what is good. If I'm starting to get to a point where I'm making these kinds of decisions apart from him, and I think it's not a big deal, maybe I need to experience the fear of what it is to almost die so that I return and I don't die. If when I walk outside and I look at the way that I allowed this person, I invited a person in to come and messy up and defile my property, and that is a continued reminder to me of what happens when I invite certain things in my life, when I return to the vomit, when I choose my enemy, when I choose self, then that's what needs to happen. And in God's goodness and his mercy and his righteousness, he isn't even dealing with me as hard as he could, as hard as he has every right to deal with me. He could have made the property so defiled that it's not going to be taken care of, that it's beyond repair. And yet yesterday morning, he sent me someone and he gave me confirmation that this person, if I had just waited a little longer, this person, I could have hired this person. If I had trusted God, if I had not thought that I needed to settle somehow, and I had just stayed in contact with him and I had trusted him, he would have sent this person. He would have given me the confirmation. I would have made the decision with him and I would have spared myself from more grief. And yet in his mercy and love and righteousness, he teaches me this lesson and he still lets me know this will be taken care of. Keep focused on me and know I've got this. No more holding on, my child. This light inside's for you. Keep focused on the things I've built and know I've got this too. Contrary to my own ideas and my own arrogance of thinking that I have done certain things in my life, and I have worked, believe me, I have worked very hard, but there are a lot of people who are working very hard who have not been given what I have been given. God did this, and God continues to do it. He continues to bless me with what he has given me. He continues to allow me to have authority over these things that he's given me. And so it's essential, if I want to keep them, that I walk in that authority correctly. And it is essential that that blessing that he has chosen us, or that he predestined us, or that we're bearing the fruit of being one of the ones, that's a blessing. That is not in and of ourselves. That is by his mercy and sovereign choice. And that wisdom and the things that he has been building in us, if we want to keep them, we're going to need to walk in them correctly. We're going to need to stay with him. We're going to need to trust him. We're going to need to pay attention to what he's building in us and not become entitled children who step apart from him and say, I'm making an executive decision. You're taking too long. He's teaching me, for sure. He's teaching me how to stay close to him. He's teaching me how to trust, how to have faith, and how to not limit what he can do in my life, how to not limit his sovereignty and his love. Because as I mentioned to you, this man, part of what factored into me choosing this person is that they had given me a lower bid in the midst of me getting ridiculously high, outrageous bids. And it's part of what factored into my decision, because I am living on a fixed income right now. I don't know how God's going to replenish that, even though he keeps doing it. I'm living on everything that I saved for my retirement, everything that I saved to have a life and be able to enjoy when I had grandchildren. Now that I'm going to have a grandchild, that's something I think about. How will I get to enjoy my grandchild when I'm concerned about money? But I think what needs to happen is I need to stop being concerned about it, and I need to trust him. And I think that this is part of, I know that this is part of what he's bringing me into, and part of what he's teaching me is to have the right perspective and understanding, to see very clearly in a salient way that I'm not in control, and the decisions that I make and the ways that I think I provide for myself are not the truth. So there's a lot that he's teaching me here. Those are just some of the things that I want to share with you, in real time. In my weakness, he's made strong. We need to understand what that means. I'm sharing my testimony with you as it's happening. It's not comfortable, but it's important. And it's important because if I just teach something, if I just teach a concept, how will you ever know the nuances? How will you ever remember when you're going through it? I heard her going through that. Thank God that I can hear that breaking down of the process so that it's palatable and I understand who I need to be. How do I rend my heart? What are the things that I need to understand? So that when you're in your own understanding, you're going to remember, and you're saying things like I was saying, really, God, was this necessary? Was all this necessary? You're going to remember that only he knows what is necessary. When he starts doing things to your property, you're going to remember this isn't just a plumbing error. This isn't just a random occurrence. He's teaching me something here, and I need to sit and learn. And when I sit and learn, he is going to relent in the grief that he sends. I may still need to hire a contractor. I may still need to hire a plumber, but nothing in our lives is happening by coincidence. We have a God who's sovereign, who is doing something all the time. Why would these things need to happen otherwise? Otherwise, it's just grief that's in vain, and God doesn't do that. The sooner we return to him, the sooner we conform our hearts to him, the sooner we learn the lesson, he will relent. These experiences will integrate, he will use it for his glory, and he will relent. But the purpose is for us to be built. And so if that's not happening, and we're just treating these experiences like they're just, as the world thinks it's just one thing after another to tackle, one more thing off the to-do list, we're not getting it. And that grief is going to continue to be sent in our lives, and it's going to get worse because he's going to make it more salient so that we get it. And I don't want you to think all the time that just because something is intense, that it's just one aspect of what he's doing, like it's just about your sin. He might also be teaching you something that you can't get otherwise. He might be bringing you into position to understand things that otherwise you would not be able to understand. So you got to take all of it into account, believe in it, and if you believe, then you'll lean into what he's doing. I really pray that he's glorified in my sharing this video with you, the experiences that I've been having over the last few days. And I hope that it helps you to understand how we need to be and how he is, what it means for us to have property, the different parables, the different metaphors and analogies that he has used, and the different things that he sends and the ways that we need to look at it as he is established in the Bible. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I will see you in the next video.